Well, as usual, I'm here to get gritty with you. Often, when it comes to love, relationships, and attachment styles, I think we're given some theoretical advice or some fluffy advice. And rarely do people actually take you on a journey through some of their most difficult moments in life. And there's lots of reasons for that. It's difficult to relive. Maybe they haven't processed it yet, or probably the most likely culprit, people are ashamed of the messy ways that they've had to learn lessons, or they think that they will be thought of as less than because they arrived at a conclusion on a gritty path. And I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. And to kind of pull back on this sort of stigma of I can't share the messy parts of my life because people won't take me as seriously, I am going to share them in an effort to help you realize that there is some very, very beautiful just gold to be found in the grit, and that the grit is just as much as a part of helping us become who we were meant to be and to connect in the healthy relationships we want to connect in, as the fluffy parts, the articulate parts, me sitting here speaking, in an articulate, clear tone. The messy is just as much a part of that. And so I want to kind of pull away this stereotype of, if I learned something the hard way, then I have to be ashamed or I have to kind of gloss over it, because I don't think that's helpful. Seeds are grown in soil, right? Seeds are grown where it's messy, where it's dark, where it's dirty. In that dirt is where life sprouts. And most often when it comes to our life lessons, we can read, all of the helpful advice in the world. But I think most often the way that we arrive is by following our instincts to the other side, listening to that inner voice to hopefully, sprout up above the ground and rise, above all these things that we've kind of been planted in. So today I'm going to share what I've learned about love, specifically love in an intimate relationship with a partner, but also what I've learned about self-love and how love really is transformative, and that we don't have to run from the gritty parts of it or to be ashamed of that. So my intention with you here today is to share my experience with the transformative power of love, both the gritty parts and the pretty parts, but also I do so in hopes that I will encourage you to seek unconditional love that transforms you and your partner, and in hopes that I will encourage you not to be ashamed of the hard lessons that you've learned, but see how everything works together equally to bring you to your highest path. So, of course, I'm going to be talking about my husband and myself, because that's where I've learned this lesson. And you know that I'm in my mid-30s. And so I want this to apply to everybody, regardless of your age. But I think my generation of people, right, the millennials, we face a unique situation in that more of us are divorced than prior generations, right? And one of the difficult things that comes with divorce is that sometimes you are more likely to look for reasons to get out of a relationship because you don't ever want to be stuck in the same way that you were stuck again. It can be hard to learn to trust and rebuild post a divorce and all of the difficulty that can come with that. But what happens sometimes, if you've gotten divorced before and you've gone through that process and you know that you can do it, is that you might be more tempted, when you enter into a different relationship, to cut and run without working on things. And it can be difficult to find that balance between, okay, what is a situation that is not worth working on, where I'm just stuck, I'm not developing, and what is something that's maybe hard and needs to be developed, and I need to give it the time and attention. Finding that balance between, okay, when do I walk away from something and how much effort do I put into something, can be really challenging when you're divorced. And you can question yourself a lot, like, oh shit, did I enter into another bad relationship because we're fighting about this thing, or because he showed this inconsistency? Did I do it again? Or, oh, okay, we're both learning together. These are kind of the internal battles that people can experience if they've gone through a divorce, and I'm telling you this from direct experience. Now you add on issues with attachment styles, and that's a recipe for a mess, okay? It's a recipe for a mess, because attachment styles, if you don't know what they are, they're becoming more and more talked about today. It's basically the lessons that we learn about love and relationships per our caregivers. So it's like based on the people who raised us, the people who took care of us at a young age, and the kind of relationship we had with them. That sort of determines how we are going to attach to people or form attachments as adults in intimate relationships. And there's typically 4 main styles of attachment that we carry. But if I understand correctly, you can kind of have a combination of both of them. I don't want this episode to exclusively be about attachment styles, because you can find that information in lots of different places. No surprise here, Ed Milet recently did a whole episode on his Ed Milet Show podcast, and it's called something like the attachment styles, and he interviews professionals. So if you really want to learn more about that, I suggest you hop over to his podcast. My podcast today is more about what those attachment styles look like in a real relationship and how to just deal with all of that, on top of everything you may be experienced in adulthood. But at a simple level, your attachment style is just how do you connect with other people based on how you connected with your caregivers. No surprise, 3 out of the 4 attachment styles could be seen as negative, or like you didn't have a healthy attachment with your caregivers. Okay, so we're already set up for failure, right? Out of 4 possible ways to attach to our caregivers, 3 of those ways are negative and lead to insecurities and intimacy issues. One of the ways that people experience attachment is how we achieve success, right? So I'm bad at math, so even small fractions are hard for me, but I think this is right. There's a 3 out of 4 chance that we're going to fail. Not good odds. No surprise here, I did not form secure attachments with my caregivers. If I had to label myself just based on what I've read about the attachment styles, I'm probably a combination of avoidant attachment and anxious attachment. Now, some would argue that combination leads to disorganized attachment, but again, I'm not here to talk too much about the labels. But what you do need to know is that people who have either an anxious and avoidant attachment style, number 1, the anxious style is a fear of abandonment. And I absolutely have that. And for me, how it showed up was, you're going to leave me if I'm not perfect. Or you're going to leave me if I emote, if I have too many strong emotions in front of you. If I make a mistake and I let my feelings out too much, you're going to leave. If I don't handle your emotions perfectly, you're going to leave. That is the heart of my attachment issue. Now, where it shows up as avoidant, which is an attachment style in itself, that is just what it sounds like, right? Like people avoid getting too close. They avoid connecting too strongly with partners because they learned at a young age that, well, there is no place for my emotions here. So they just don't show them. They kind of cut their emotions off from themselves and from other people. So that's the avoidance style. And I would kind of go back and forth between these two. I would go back and forth between getting in relationships and fearing being left, and often acting out of that fear and saying, fine, then just go. Like acting out kind of in anger, as I've shared before, and just saying, well, just leave then. Kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of telling someone to go so that I didn't hurt when they told me they were going to go. Where I exercised avoidant attachment for a while was a string of relationships that I didn't really care about, right? I've shared some of my dating history where I purposely would go back and forth between people who I knew I didn't have a future with, because if I knew that they weren't right for me, well, then it wouldn't hurt if they left or if I left them, right? So I avoided my true feelings, and I kind of just coupled up with somebody to pass the time with, which sucks, but that's what I did. And I'm sure that there's some of you out there who can relate to that, one or all of those pieces. Now, my husband actually has a similar combination, both anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. And that has shown up in different ways for him too. And so when you put two people like that together, two people who've also been divorced, you're gonna see some shit, right? And so when you're with someone and you both kind of have these tendencies of, okay, I'm not gonna, stick around if something isn't right. I'm gonna cut and run. Plus people who've never really securely attached, and that's where you feel safety with your partner, right? If you're securely attached to someone, you know they love you no matter what. You know that they love you in all conditions and all lights, and you're not afraid that they're gonna leave. You're not afraid that they're gonna judge you. That's secure attachment. So here you have two people in my marriage who want that, but two people who are also on the other side of abuse, two people who are also on the other side of divorces, two people who also in their 30s and 40s are just starting to deal with their attachment issues, because these attachment issues that we have as children follow us into adulthood, right? And often we're not aware of them, which is why they're so powerful. First, you have to have that awareness, right? And it took a while for me to learn that awareness with my husband. It was argument after argument, and it would start as something small, right? A disagreement over, the way one of us disciplined the kids or just whatever, some sort of perceived unfairness. And it would escalate into me saying, well, fine, just go then, assuming that he was going to leave me for one reason or another. And time after time of my hearing myself say, then fine, just go. And then asking myself, do I really want him to go? No, I don't want him to go. So why do I keep saying it? Oh, because I'm afraid he's going to. It took years of me hearing myself say that to create that awareness. And you can't change something until you're aware that it's happening. So my first piece of advice to you is, if you're looking to love yourself more or have a partnership where you feel more safe and connected, it starts with you and having an awareness of, okay, what are the things that I'm doing related to attachment or related to just fear? What am I doing that's creating a divide, a distance from myself and distance from my partner? What am I saying that seems to just create more distance? And the reason I knew that my saying, fine, just leave, created more distance, part of it is the obvious, right? Like part of it is like, well, I'm saying leave, telling someone to go is going to create distance, because either they're going to get offended and, just keep arguing with you, or they actually will go. And then you feel like shit, that wasn't helping. And so finally, I was looking at the situation and it's like, okay, telling him to leave doesn't actually help because I don't want him to leave. And I feel awful after I say it. So look at the conflict that you might be having with your partner. And what is something that you continuously come back to? Something you feel like you have to say or do because you're afraid, but it's not serving you. Okay? That's often what we do. If something is related to an attachment style, is we revert to the things that we think protect us. And when I was a child, and even in former relationships, it was safer for me to just not express my emotions and to expect that someone was gonna leave, because that kind of is what happened. And neither of my parents left me. It's more related to emotional things and things that I couldn't say or do. But if you really want to kind of just start with pursuing, love, look at your own attachment style. Figure out, what do I say out of fear? What do I say in the heat of conflict? And don't be ashamed of your conflict. And believe me, I know that's easier said than done, okay? Because I look back on my first year or two with my husband, which was the hardest because he and I were unlearning, a lot of habits that served us when we were around people who couldn't meet our emotional needs, whether that was our parents or our ex-spouses. Those habits served us then, but they didn't serve us together. And the reality, folks, is that our habits don't just go away. They don't just disappear, even if you're with the right person. The brain is designed to protect you, both emotionally and physically. And it's in moments of tension, it's going to revert back to what it already knows to help you. So you have to be willing to engage in this conscious process of, what am I saying when I'm afraid? What am I saying when I'm angry? Because those statements will be key to helping you figure out what it is that you need to work on, what it is that you need to heal. And so the gritty part of this is, like, I'll just flat out say, like I used to say to my husband all the time, fine, go, fine, leave. But it never felt good, and it never fixed anything. And it wasn't what I actually wanted. I was afraid he was going to leave me because things got tense. I was afraid he was going to. So I said it so that if I said it first, it wouldn't hurt when in my mind he would inevitably say it back to me. So step one is just taking a look at what we say when we're angry and afraid, because that gives us a clue as to what we need to work on. And how do we work on it? Well, I've shared a little bit. You can go back and listen to my whole fear episode, right? You can go back and listen to that episode where I talk about conquering fear, where it's like, okay, you just spend some time with yourself. If you want to talk to a therapist, absolutely do that. If it's within your means, for sure, talk to a therapist if you feel like you have an attachment issue that you want to talk out. But another way to do it is to just spend some time with yourself and literally just write down the question, why am I so afraid of being left? Or why am I so afraid of being vulnerable? Whatever it is that you fear in your relationship, write it down. I'm afraid of being stuck in a dead-end marriage again. Write your fear down. Even just the act of writing your fear down or asking yourself why you're so afraid is a powerful step towards you dealing with that fear so that it doesn't control you anymore. When you spend time alone with your thoughts and even journaling your thoughts, you start to understand them. And then you can make a conscious effort to work toward a different pattern. Because once you physically write down, oh, I'm afraid of abandonment, you can write down how you would like to feel. And how I want to feel is secure, even in conflict. I want to feel secure in every emotion that I have. So no surprise, I wrote that down next, right? In my journal, I wrote, I'm afraid of abandonment. And then I wrote, I want to feel secure in every light, in every mood, in every situation. And then I realized that I could offer that to myself. I realized that I could choose. I could choose to live a relationship where I'm vulnerable. Yeah, sure, my husband could leave me. But I control whether or not I create the kind of relationship where I push him towards that or where I walk away from that. And what I mean by that is this. I hold my own fear. I can start to tell myself, even in conflict, you're safe. You're just figuring it out. Because I know that I am with somebody who can handle my emotions. He can. Not always perfectly, but he can. It is safe to express my emotions in front of him. But I'm slowly working towards realizing I have control over my own fear in conflict. And I can tell my fear, because I know that I'm in a healthy relationship, I can tell my fear, hey, this doesn't serve you anymore. And I can tell myself, even in the heat of the moment, hey, Jenna, fear doesn't serve you here. Get to the other side with him. See how you've already learned from conflict in the past. You don't have to fear it. You don't have to fear emoting in front of him. You both are learning together. So working through it starts with just awareness. Look at, what are you saying most often when you're afraid in conflict? Then just write it down. Ask yourself, why am I so afraid? Give yourself the gift of 5 minutes. And I promise you, you can work all those minutes together, and grow. I have done all of this while raising 6 kids and dealing with some pretty intense stuff. So you don't have to have hours of perfectly quiet, contemplative meditation to get to the other side of your issues. You just have to give yourself 5 minutes. Hell, do it in the bathroom. Instead of scrolling on your phone, if you want to take a journal into the bathroom, go ahead, or just do it in your head. If you're not comfortable writing the stuff down yet, just do it in your head. Why am I so afraid? And give yourself the gift of just waiting a minute. You don't need hours of contemplative silence or a retreat to do this. Those things are wonderful, and if you have them, great, go for it. But this can be done in a couple of minutes. And those minutes add up, and slowly new patterns emerge. So that's one way that love can transform, is by just recognizing yourself, understanding yourself and how you work. And the other piece of that, because this is also about self-love, is about reflecting on your past, seeing that child in you, whoever that child is, and loving them as an adult. And that can be a very simple visualization. You can go back to your most painful memories and you can hug yourself as a child. Or when it comes to because another thing that comes up often with my husband and I, until we met each other, we never felt like people had really believed in our dreams. And often when I would be writing a story or expressing a point, I would tell myself, oh God, this is stupid. It's so stupid. I hate it. And that's because I had felt rejected in the past. Well, sometimes in my mind, I will talk to that little girl and I'll say, you have a brilliant mind. Because I do. And that little girl and even the teenager in me needed to hear it. So one way that you learn to love yourself is you talk to the child in you. You talk to the teenager in you. And it can even be one line. You have a brilliant mind. So visualize yourself. Visualize yourself sometimes during moments of hurt, unless, let me say this. If you don't feel safe going back to some of your traumatic memories, maybe don't do it without a professional present. If you're trying to go back and your body's really resisting, it's like, no, it might not be safe to go there. Maybe wait till you're with a professional. But the moments that you're like, no, you know what, I can go there. Your body's not really resisting it. You can remember. You might feel a little twinge of pain, but still push past that and hug that small child in you. Comfort that teenager. When it comes to your dreams and your emotions, tell yourself what you needed to hear. Because even in the most loving relationships, you can't always be there perfectly for your partner. So you might notice a lot of this centers on getting to know yourself. That's one of the things that love does. You learn to love yourself. Because even the healthiest of relationships still involve two human beings who can't be there for each other perfectly at all times. And you'll find that if you develop methods of comforting yourself after an argument or being there for yourself in moments of difficulty, you're much more able to come out of a conflict because you're able to meet some of your own needs. You're not relying 100% on your partner, right? You're developing your own methods for caring for yourself. And in addition to comforting the child in you, it's also really important to let the adult live their dreams, the dreams that most likely started as a child or as a teenager. You will often find that living your dreams goes hand in hand with love and loving yourself and loving your partner. There was a guest, and I can't remember his name right now, and I'm really sorry about that, but he was on Ed Milet's podcast a couple episodes ago. And he told the story about this woman who he was helping, who always loved to dance but felt foolish, as she got older about dancing and just stopped doing it. And she was dealing with a lot of issues, with her marriage, with her career, things like that. And he said, well, what do you love to do? What did you love to do as a child? And basically it came out that she loved to dance. And so she started, and this guy told her, take that little girl dancing. And so by little girl, he meant, the child version of herself. And so as an adult woman, she went dancing again. And slowly other areas of her relationship started to improve, right? So her marriage, her career, all of that kind of started to improve as she started to go dancing. And I believe that our dreams are kind of the essence of who we are. They're the essence of our heart. So whatever it is that you believe in deeply, find it again. Hold on to it and give yourself that gift as an adult of pursuing that thing. And I have plenty of episodes about how to start pursuing your dreams. So just check out some of my past episodes about that. But you will find that validating your dreams in whatever way you are naturally makes you a healthier person, because you're validating who you really are. It's you believing in who you really are. And the more you believe in yourself, the more you can believe in your partner. The more that you can withstand everyday tensions, because you have this core being kind of anchoring you. The more you know who you are regardless of what's going on around you. So give yourself the gift of honoring your dreams, of honoring your passions, and hold tightly to those. So the first part of this is very much about awareness of who you are, loving yourself through these little steps of journaling, asking yourself questions, identifying your dreams, and finding little windows where you can live them. Now, when it comes to that part that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode about recognizing the difference between, okay, how do I know if I'm just stuck in something again, or if this is something that I need to work through? Because I can tell you folks, even when you're in a healthy relationship, you've got to work through things, especially if you're just, now dealing with some of your attachment issues or whatever it might be that you maybe stuffed during your first marriage or prior relationships. So when it comes to, some of the transformative things that my husband and I had to go through, there were certain behaviors of his that I reverted to old ways, both tied to my attachment styles, but also things that served me in the past. So where my husband and I were a really bad combination is that my husband was used to leaving his house whenever he was in high emotion, both in his relationship with his ex and also growing up. His solution to having big emotions was to leave and take a drive, because there was no place for his emotions in the house. And so that's what he would do when we would argue, is he would leave and drive. Well, that was a very bad combination at first, because I have a fear of abandonment. And it took some hours of couple therapy plus our own awareness as practices for me to say, hey, when you leave during arguments, it triggers every instinct I have to just say, fine, go, and wall up and just think I need to do it on my own. But that's not what he was trying to do at all. He was just trying to take some space with his thoughts, and we had to kind of work through that together. But I bring that up to say, it took a conscious effort for me to go, okay, he left during a time of high emotion. When I first interpreted that, like I said, I walled up and I thought, okay, he left. I have to do this alone. That, it's best for me to just do it alone. Again, my brain went there. But then the more, it took some time sitting with it. The more that I thought about it, the more it's like, but I don't want him to leave, and I don't want to leave him, and something about this feels different. Something feels deeper. We're not meant to be apart because we have all these things connecting us. And by all these things, I mean the things that have always connected my husband and I. Shared dreams, right? Artistic connections, communication. We can talk for hours. We still had those things connecting us, even in this argument where he walked away. And I was able, even in a heightened emotion state, when he came back, and at first my instinct was to go, hey, you left. What the hell? No, don't come back, But I kind of pushed past those instincts to ask myself, okay, do I really believe that I'm meant to be separate from this person? No, I don't believe that. So then what do I have to do so that we both feel safe and comfortable when we're in these emotions? And for me, as you can hear now, that took learning. That took asking questions when I was in a calm state of, okay, why do you leave? And I learned through asking him, oh, okay, well, he never really felt comfortable expressing his emotions in the home, so he's kind of reverting back to that. And then I was able to express to him, well, I have a fear of abandonment, and you're kind of just feeding this. And so together we both kind of had things to work on, right? You've already heard my journey of like dealing with the fear of abandonment piece, but he also said, maybe I need to learn some new coping mechanisms. Maybe I need to not leave because that's not serving me anymore. And also, this is a different house. This is a house where we do express our emotions. I need to find a way of coping while I'm here. And that's a major difference in relationships. If you're trying to decide if you're stuck or not, are both parties willing to learn? My husband was always willing to learn, just like me. He was able to look at himself too and say, you know what? This is why I leave. Maybe I need to try something else. And that was how I knew. It's because he was willing to learn too. So if you're in a new relationship or you're in a new marriage and you're trying to figure out, okay, is this still right? Is this love? Is this me maybe entering into another bad situation, or is this something else? Just ask yourself those questions. Is my partner willing to learn? Are they willing to acknowledge my fears and help me with those? I've noticed lately, because it does take time. It does take years, I've noticed, in particular lately, my husband has been more intentional about saying things to me like, I never want to leave you. And it's not him like feeding into this codependent, insecure attachment, whatever thing. It's him just trying to help me out with that validation sometimes. Putting that into a text, I never want to leave you. He calls me his evermore a lot. And that gives me words to hold on to when tension arises, because even during conflict, that fear still flares up. He's going to leave. It's getting too hard. You didn't handle it. He's going to go. But guess what? After time of working on this, that fear is not as powerful as it used to be. It's muffled. It's quieter. Because I've been teaching myself that I have control of it and that it doesn't serve me now. It's become quieter. So these things take time, right? Rebuilding your attachment styles, learning to securely attach takes time. It takes time to learn to really love. But it's absolutely worth it, because here's what I can tell you. In every argument that my husband and I have had, there's always been this undercord of my wanting to be a better person. That's a good sign that you're in a healthy relationship, when you want to keep reaching higher, not when someone's pulling you down in the muck with them. Ever since I've met my husband, I've always wanted the best for him, the best for me, the best for us, and the best for all of our kids. And I know that he does too. Typically, if you are in the wrong relationship, somebody's dragging you. My husband has never been dragging me. We're both trying to figure this out together. And fighting, arguing is never perfect. But I think we all need to fear it a little less, and to be a little bit more patient of ourselves when we're learning. Because I can tell you, over the last several years, I have become a version of myself that I love. And I can look back on my past now and see the person that I used to be ashamed of, but not look at them with shame anymore. Look on them with compassion. That is what the right relationship feels like. That even in all the tension, even in the ugliest of moments, you still want to reach higher, and your partner does too. That's the biggest way to recognize transformative love. And that's what I know. That's what I know about love. And so I hope that some of the examples that I've given you today of some of my grittiest moments, some of my hardest moments, some of my biggest fears, I'm saying them out loud. I used to be embarrassed. I used to think, because my husband and I fought about that, we must not be right for each other. No, what's happened is my husband and I arguing about things. It's kind of like, it's going to sound weird, but it's like our inner child, our inner teenager, and the adult version of us finally coming out Like we're finally saying years of things that have needed to be said, and we're saying them together, but we're learning together. That's the difference, right? Like if somebody just stops and they freeze and they just keep, yelling at you like a child, that's maybe an issue. But recognize growth. Recognize when people are making an active effort, and what that looks like is therapy. My husband and I both have been willing to go to therapy. What that looks like is seeing habit changes and also allowing yourself to see habit changes in your partner, right? The mind is naturally drawn more towards the negative. And sometimes we only see the negative and we forget the parts where our partner has grown. So it's also important, if you and your partner are working on things, to actively maybe even write down or acknowledge out loud to them, but also to yourself, ways that you see that they've made progress. Hey, I noticed that you don't go for a drive anymore. I really appreciate when you're feeling angry. I see that you've started journaling instead, or you listen to music instead. I really appreciate that. Consciously acknowledge the ways that you are growing and the way that your partner is growing, because that's going to train your mind to also focus more on the growth than on the negative, than on the old patterns. So make sure you set aside time to do that. Love is transformative, my friends, and we need not fear the grit. As long as you sense that your partner respects you, and you know if they do, spend a minute asking yourself. The answer will come faster than you think. If you are with a partner who respects you and who's growing with you, don't fear the complicated ways that you've grown. Seeds grow in soil, right? It's muddy. It's murky. You don't always know what you're doing, but you are still growing. And you don't need to fear that growth as long as you are with somebody who mutually respects you. And I promise your heart and your body already know that answer. I'm so grateful for you. And I want to encourage you today to get that journal out. Ask yourself some hard questions. Take a moment today and thank your partner. If you said, yeah, you know what? I am with someone who respects me and somebody who is experiencing that mutual growth, take some time to give them a compliment. Acknowledge that growth to them. It goes a long way, and no surprise here, it will encourage them to engage more in that, because we all want to be acknowledged for what we're doing. So acknowledge that in your partner, and take some time for your dreams today. Take some time to ask yourself what it is that you dream about. Ask the child, ask the teenager, and ask your adult self, what are my dreams? What do I care about? And give yourself the gift of spending some time with them today, making a plan to live some of those dreams. Share this episode with someone who you think it could help. That's a great step too. And you always know how grateful I am to you for coming.